So I start? Yes, okay. Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. Bonjour, bon après-midi. I'm Nalini Vadapalli. I know most of you, and I'm really delighted to welcome everyone. Some of our members are sitting in the boardroom, and we've got a number of members joining us via Zoom. I wanted to confirm for everyone that we are recording this event. We're trying to do better to be able to share our CLE events on our YouTube channel and on our website. I'm really delighted to be able to welcome Murielle Jassinthe, who's the CEO of Black Lantern today, recognizing that this month was Black History Month. And I'll ask Murielle to introduce herself, but I also want to just share a little bit about how, with respect to cultural competency, the Law Society views cultural competency through the lens of EDI, of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So this is one event of a number of events to come that talks about the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I would encourage you, if you haven't had a chance, is to review our CLE policy, which is on our website. I also wanted to remind everyone that on our website, on Murielle Jacinthe's CLE event today, there is a fantastic list of resources that Murielle has put together, kind of planting a seed, and hopefully people will be curious to review the list and familiarize themselves with some wonderful materials that Murielle has put together for us. And I'll turn it over to Murielle. So, merci Murielle.
Merci, Nalini. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today. It's really exciting time to be able to be there with you and talk about Black History Month and our related also like subjects has like systemic racism and everything that we've been like well aware of for years, but like mainly since 2020 has been really clear that we needed to do something different to make sure that everyone is well represented. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about me. I'm, maybe you can hear it. I'm Francophone, it's my first language. I was born and raised in Quebec City. I'm here since it's been 8 years. My background, I'm from Haiti. And so I studied in Francophone and African literature, which led me really to dig into like the discourse and about colonization, history, slavery. And I learned a lot myself. And as I like to say right now, since that little seed that's been, put in my head is like, Black History Month and all Black history is our history, history of everyone. It has been stripped from us for a long time, but now it's time to take it back and all learn about our history, all cultures. So voila. And just to talk to you a little bit about, you received the list. What I like to do, because there's so many ways to learn about a topic. So that list, you can definitely, like visit it. I invite you to dig into it. I'm not a lawyer. Ooh, let me see. I'm not a liar. I hope so. I'm not a lawyer myself, but in my own experience, many articles and resources useful for everyone to know about human rights, about law, and that's mainly what you are professional in. But also there's different resources that have been done. For example, by the Black North Initiative, there's a playbook helping us like to make our organization more DEI oriented. And so, yeah, I just invite you to take a look at it. And there's other stuff like, yeah, there's the magnifique little QR code that made for us, isn't it? And you can, yeah, take a picture, open it, it's all yours. There's also like the Translation Bureau of Canada, who have done a great guideline of resources to being more able to use properly different terms that we've been like learning ourselves, like about DEI, but like for all, you know, inclusivity, about gender, about everything. So it's good when you don't know, you can take a look and being more aware of that, and we all learn from this. And yeah, so yeah, I just invite you to take a look. If you love movies, there's some great movies that you can also just watch and learn. There's also, I know that you're also busy. So I think I love reading. Sometimes I just go on Audible. And so I put little aesthetics nearby the ones which are audiobooks. So sometimes just put that on your head, you know, and you do your laundry, whatever you want to do, and you learn at the same time. Yeah. And at last, oh yeah, and there's also something else, because I guess there's also self-identify Afro-descent warrior, and so there's also like the guide, unapologetic guide for Black mental health that is really interesting to listen. I think it can resonate for BIPOC in general and just for humankind in general too, because you know, but it's mental health is also really important in this regard. Okay, so if you're ready, let's dig into Black History Month. So yes, and I will invite you as well, especially if you have questions, don't hesitate. We're gonna build that together as well, this presentation. So we're gonna talk about Black History Month, the origins, okay, in the United States. Then in Canada, we will visit the civil rights movements, you know, like the figures really made it possible, and talk also about the background, what led us there. Then we're gonna have a good talk about systemic racism, the concept of representation linked to our systemic racism, and then we'll dig into how we can make a change, like how to advocate. So Black History Month in USA. So Black History Month is an annual celebration. So it was created like to celebrate the achievement of Black Americans. It recognized the central role of African American in United States history. It's also known as African American History Month, created by Carter G. Woodson and Jassinthe Moreland. Since 1966, February has been celebrated and designated for Black History Month by every US president. There's also other countries when we celebrate Black History Month, such as Canada and United Kingdom. So here's Carter G. Woodson and J.C. Edward Moreland. Okay, so that's been founded in 1950, out of century after the abolition of slavery in United States. In September, Carter and Moreland founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. The goal was to research and promote achievement by Black Americans and also by other people of African descent. Why, we can say, why we think it could be important to research and promote the achievement of Black Americans and other people of color. Okay, I'll let you warm up slowly. Representation. Mhm. Because when you've got representation and you know your history, you've got roots to build, and you're able also like to celebrate it and to keep moving forward. Mhm. It's why like culture, language, history is that important. So the first name of the of Black History Month, when it was like more than one celebration, it was in 1926, and it was Negro History. So that organization formed by, was found in Washington, and it was in response to a movie that came out in 1915, if I'm not wrong, it's 1915. And it's the movie The Birth of the Nation by D.W. So that movie was really particular because that group tried, a lot of Black people went to protest the release of this movie and in Boston. But there were thousands of people, of white Boston men, who went to see the movie. And the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People were unsuccessful to ban the film.
May we ask what the film was about?
Oh,
That sparked
yeah.
the protest.
Exactly. And I'm going to tell
Is
you.
that next?
Yeah. You can see at least. Yeah. Yeah, good question. So released in 1915, that originally the movie name was The Klansman. So yeah, so it doesn't already it sounds wrong about the name, right? And so it was like an epic drama, like really depicting this era, like a holy era. So there was a lot of things. That movie, since that day, is the most controversial movie ever produced. It was even before its release. And one of the things is that the way they were portraying, representing Black people, was just wrong. Like white actor with black face, like depicting people, represent people as unintelligent, sexually aggressive with women, etc., etc. A lot of exactly your stereotypes, and also it was presenting the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, as heroic. So it's definitely one of the reasons. It is how that organization began.
You mean the organization? You mean the colored people?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Black History Month in Canada. So Black History Month in Canada, but obviously it's been inspired by Black History Month in the United States. It's why we kept February as the same month to celebrate Black History Month. So in 1978, the Ontario History Society was established. The Dr. Daniel G. Hill and Wilson O. Bruce and other founders presented a petition to the city of Toronto. So they have February formally proclaimed as Black History Month. In 1979, the first ever Canadian proclamation was issued by Toronto. In Nova Scotia, in 1988, they celebrate Black History Month for the first time. It's where it was the first time celebrated. And later, in 1996, Black History Month was renamed for African Heritage Month. In 1993, the Ontario Black History Month Society filed a petition in Ontario to proclaim February as Black History Month. Its president, Rosemary Sadler, introduced the idea for having Black History Month recognized across Canada. And she introduced it to the Honorable Jane Austen, the first Black Canadian woman elected to Parliament. So in December 1995, the House of Commons officially recognized February as Black History Month in Canada, following the motion introduced by the Dr. Jane and his team. The House of Commons carried the motion unanimously. In February 2008, the Senator Donald Oliver, the first Black man appointed to the Senate, introduced the motion to recognize contribution of Black Canadians and February as Black History. Everybody approved unanimously, and motion was adopted in March 4th, 2008. And that's how it completes Canada's Parliament position on Black History Month. There's a little thing, it's not really, it's kind of related to Emancipation Day, yes. So Emancipation Day finally has been commemorated in Canada August 1st. So on the 24th of March, 2021, the House of Commons voted unanimously again to officially decide August 1st, Emancipation Day. So it's been commemorated for the first time in 2021. And so why this date? Because in 1834 is the day when the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833 came into effect across the British Empire. So good news.
It was August 1st of which year?
34. Yeah.
Or 1830?
Yeah. Let me see just to be sure. Sometimes they get 1834, yes. And the act is the act of 33. Yeah, yes. So here's Honorable Jane Augustine. She is lovely. She came here in Nunavut. She's been, she received the Sankofa Award from NBHS, Nunavut Black History Society, in 2020, I think it was 2021, for a life achievement. Yes. So she is the first Black female MP and cabinet minister, social justice advocate, teacher, and principal. She's a trailblazing politician and social activist. She's the first elected Black female member of parliament in 1993, appointed the first Black woman in cabinet in 2002, named first Fairness Commissioner by the Government of Ontario in 2007. So her legacy includes Black History Month being recognized and celebrated across Canada. Thank you, James. Okay, so we know about Black History Month, the celebration, but what came first? Why are we celebrating Black History Month? Maybe the title tells a little bit, The Road to Black History Month, a history of anti-Black racism. I think it gives you a little bit of indication, but yeah, it was this. So there's Jim Crow, by example, and you can see I put a resource about Jim Crow in the you can see that. Yeah, in the resource list, there's a resource like that, and you can also just listen to it on Audible if you want. So Jim Crow. So the rules of Jim Crow laws began as early of 1865 at the abolition of slavery. So that's interesting though, because right after slavery, Jim Crow began? Do you have like an idea for which reason?
No, I guess she was not happy, I guess. I guess.
I guess. So Jim Crow were a collection of state and local statutes that legalized racial segregation. So named after a Black minister showed character, the law. It exists about 100 years. So it was like from the post-Civil War era until 1968. It was meant to marginalize African Americans. So how? How can we, and it's really interesting because all this, it's really embedded into law and systems. So how they do that? So denying Afro-descent the right to vote, all jobs, get an education and other opportunities. What was the consequence of it? Those who were attempting to defy Jim Crow's law often face arrest, fines, jail sentence, violence, and death.
Yes, it's to show how like the mentality was like implemented in a system.
Exactly. There's like an intellectual it's a Greek man, suddenly I forgot his name. But what he was saying though is like even if a system is not in place, the foundation of this system is just passed on in the next one.
Yeah.
It doesn't disappear. Just finding other ways to make it legal. Yeah. So there were strict local and state laws that detail when, where, how formerly enslaved people could work and for how much compensation. So the legal system was totally stacked against Black citizens. And who were the people to make sure that it was like enforced by former Confederate soldiers working as police and judges? So legislation, coercion, like, like all you need is like two of the 4/5 power of a country. It's like the police, there's media, there's like the legislation powers. So like when like the main ones are there to make sure that a situation perdure, like just stay in place, it's difficult to do otherwise. That's what we call the systemic.
Yes, and they lost the power, they were scared the power. They wanted to keep power.
Yeah.
Power, it's a power grab.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you read like compensation, you're asking yourself like, really you're asking compensation.
Yeah, because like Afro-descent.
Like you torture people and now you're asking compensation for you lost life. Like it should be like the other way, like them asking compensation. Like asking compensation. They're asking compensation for.
Yeah. And that tells a lot about the representation and the recognition of the humanity of Afro-descent, which were not human for the enslaver, but they being like objects.
Goods.
It was goods that you can exchange.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's what happened in many countries, as in Haiti, first Black Republic of the world. But like we needed to pay France because they lost their property when we became free. Yeah. Still paying in many ways.
I will
So-
just mention at this
Yeah.
point, if anyone who's joining us virtually have any questions or comments for Murielle, please feel free to pop that in the chat and we'll make sure that she gets to the questions.
And so all of that were subject to Black codes. Let's go to Black codes. What is? So the Black codes, it appeared through the South, and it was a legal way to put Black citizens into indentured servitude, to take voting rights away, control where they live, how they travel, and to seize children for labor purpose. So what is interesting in that stage is because if you were, because that is a lot of control. So to make a living, you need to be able to make a living. But all the parameters were so difficult that it was easy to not obey the law. That in order to survive, you couldn't really, abide to the law. So it was an easy way for them to enslave you again. Because if you were caught, you were able to be re-enslaved. They were saying like forced labor, the same with children. But like, that's what's lead us to the penal system that we have today, incarceration, mass incarceration of Afro descent. Yeah, in the United States, but also in Canada and other countries, that's especially in the United States though, but it's definitely just the transformation of from slavery to Jim Crow and prison. Voilà. So civil rights movement. So because of this situation, like it wasn't possible to experience life fully. So Black Americans organized themselves and to end racial discrimination and gain equal rights under the law. It mainly happened like, so since after the Civil War, even if slavery was abolished, discrimination was still going on. Black people were still enduring the consequence of racism, especially in the South. And so from the late 40s to the late 60s, that's when like the civil rights movement was like really like going on. But mainly like most of them were in the 50s and 60s. So that civil rights movement was a struggle for social justice. And it was an organized effort to end racial discrimination and gain equal rights under the law, which is important. There's also many white Americans who mobilized as well and fighting for the same ideal. Civil rights, human rights. So that movement, even if it was pretty tumultuous, was still like non-violent. And let's say that one of the rights, some of the rights was the right to vote, right to fair trial, right to government, right to access to government services, and right to public education and to use public facilities. So do you have like an idea of some facilities, some example of that segregation regarding public facilities? There's somebody that we know well who did something, she's a woman, and it was, yes, buses, exactly, public transportation, and what else? Like, you know, like everyday life things that were just like, really? What's on there?
Grows up on.
Yes, exactly. And there's also like, you know, going, using restrooms,
Yeah.
or drinking water to the fountain.
Movie theaters.
Movie theaters, yes.
Swimming pools.
Yeah.
And public benches and parks as well, right?
Yes, and there's so many places.
And were there different entrances as well? I'm asking because I'm South African, so I have, you know, I have the background, my knowledge is in South African apartheid.
Yeah.
But I'm not too well versed in what happened here, the US and Canada. So were there different entrances to certain shops? Were people not allowed to shop?
Yeah, I think that in Canada, I thought it's so a bit tricky. In the United States, it was like this. Definitely, there are places where there was just no way that you can.
I know in Nova Scotia they have something like that in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I heard something.
In the movie theater. Well, the one now is she is like on our $10 bill.
Yes.
Viola Davis.
Yeah. Oh, this one.
No, it's a woman on the top.
Yeah. Exactly. So so that was the kind of thing that was happening. Exactly. So thank you. So Dr. Martin Luther King said at some point, well, that's not like a direct quote, I just wrote it there, but for he believed that civil rights are human rights. It seems obvious, but civil rights are human rights. And it's necessarily to go beyond civil rights to access basic human rights for all. That's it. So why civil rights are important? But it's important, it's a component of democracy. It denies opportunity to participate in political society. Is equal of being denied, being denied opportunity to participate in political society is equal of being denied of the civil rights. Civil rights are secured by positive government action, often in the form of legislation. Civil rights laws attempt to guarantee full and equal citizenship for people who have traditionally been discriminated, and when the enforcement of civil rights is inadequate, is when civil rights movement may emerge and calling for equal application of the law without discrimination. Do you have like any idea, by example, of which kind of, maybe like an example in the near past, really, really near, where in Canada, we began to ask for, equal application of the laws without discrimination.
Are we speaking of perhaps a very controversial?
Not as controversial, but
Okay.
like really, really public. Like everybody knows there's a group. It began with a B. It's about our lives.
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, like in fact, with Black Lives Matter movements, like their goal is this: to have equal application of the law. Is why we have like a lot of calls for action for different level of government asking to just really take a look of how the society is working and how we can make sure that the system will be not discriminating people, but give them equal opportunities. Yeah, so okay, civil rights. Let's go with a little walk in memory lane of civil rights. There's plenty of really important dates, but let's try like to go smoothly. Like how we have almost 30 minutes. Just so we can take a time. So in 48, July 26, the President Harry Truman issued the Executive Order 9981 to end segregation in the armed services. In 1954, May 17, that's interesting there, Brown versus Board of Education. The consolidation of 5 cases in one is decided by the Supreme Court to effectively end racial segregation in public school. But a lot of schools remain segregated. Would you have an idea why it could be important to desegregate public schools?
Well, to give equal opportunity to go to higher education, that obviously you start with that school that you start like your career.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think there's a sense, and maybe this is more pronounced in the US than Canada, but there's a sense that the good teachers or the good resources are concentrated at certain schools. So if you diversify schools, then more people from different backgrounds will have arguably what we would, I guess, call equal opportunity. Obviously, there are systems that work inside of these sort of more gentrified or diversified schools that may actually attenuate the degree to which that is actually a reality. But I think in theory, that's what is trying to be done.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's also like, because it's also about areas, where you live. So like the place where you live will decide where you go to school. And it's a lot about like the money is invested in this community. Not every teacher like will be what I want, like whatever, I'm gonna go like to that really poor area with no resources. Like it's possible that there's great teacher too, and probably there is because you're working there. But at the same time, if you don't have all the resource necessary, there's a lot of things that you can't learn or you can't do. There was a research, I'm doing out of study, but there was a research when they were trying to analyze like the IQ of children. And they were like comparing the IQ of Afro-descent children versus non-racialized kids. And it was like, oh, they're less intelligent. But your knowledge goes with your reality. So if there's things that you can't experience because you don't have the money to experience it, how can you know that it exists? Like you don't have money to put money at the bank. Of course, you don't know, the basics of how it works. It's not part of your reality. You don't have money to go on vacation and go skiing, because your family is working, you don't go skiing. Like, you don't know how to ski.
Yeah,
No,
I don't have like the extracurricular like activities, like I don't know, like the music courses outside of the school. We don't have. This is very important for children to grow extracurricular activities.
Exactly, that really give them other sense of tools. And also there's the fact that depending where you've been to school, when you're supposed to go to the next level, the person who will look at your file won't be as impressed if you've been from a really poor school, like, and not like a prestigious school. Like that's we all have bias. It's something that is possible. Okay, so August 28th, 1955, Emmett Till, the 14-year-old young man in Chicago, was brutally murdered because they were saying that she was flirting with a white woman. So murderers were acquitted, and so it brings really international attention to this civil rights movement.
There's a movie on it that came out last year. It's really well done.
Do you know the movie?
It's called Till.
Oh,
Till?
So,
yeah, okay. Look at it. I'm gonna add that to our source.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so we talked about her, right? Rosa Parks. In 1955, December 1st, she refused to give up her seat to a white woman on a Montgomery bus in Alabama. So that's what really prompted the Montgomery bus boycott. In 1957, January 10 to 11, 60 Black pastors and civil rights leaders from several southern states, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., met in Atlanta, in Georgia, and they coordinated nonviolent protests against racial discrimination and segregation. So in 48, July 26, the president, Harry Truman, issued the oh, I already did that. We did. Oh yeah, oh sorry. I was like, man, yeah, I was like, hey, we might know something. Let's go back. This, okay. Oh yeah, oh yes. 1957, September 4th. 9 Black students knows at the Little Rock man are blocked from integrating into Little Rock Central High School in Little Rock. The president, Eisenhower, eventually sent federal troops to escort the student in, but they were still being harassed. In 57, September 9, Eisenhower signed the Civil Rights Act into law, and it helped protect voters' rights. So it allows federal prosecution of those who suppress another's right to vote. So what can we see there that is interesting? Is there people when, we're trying to go like to fight discrimination, what was like mainly the reaction of people, like both like everyday people, you could say, what were their reactions?
What do you mean by that?
Okay, like their supporters and their people were against, usually.
Mhm.
So what do you see in what we've been talking about like the main reaction that you can see? Some people were trying to change things and others were like, no, we refuse.
Well, I wanted to say it seems like more like people like from the southern United States were more against the civil rights movement, or from the north were more for. But well, it makes sense in the sense that people from the south were more like well, the white were more like slave owners and descendants. So in this sense, they were more against people from the north. Well, there was no slavery in the north, so they were more like in favor of the civil rights movement.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. But at the same time, let's say, and I was reading something from Dr. Robin D'Angelo, if you're gonna see in a video later. And so the idea of South versus North, like if the South was more open, yes and no, because ingrained racism is something that we all been like the superiority of the white culture, this domination is something that has been ingrained in our societies, like at every level in different ways. So we can see there that there were some politicians who were doing some action, some activists as well. The population probably afraid of the change. Some were really against, some were, yeah, we agree. And what I found interesting here is like, even if the law was trying to apply and fight against discrimination, like in everyday life, the effect of that violence was still going on. So I just want to point that.
That's interesting. One of the things, and this is not a fully baked thought, so forgive me, but one of the things I'm thinking of is that law typically is implemented like in incremental ways. It's not overnight a law changes. It's more so that a society changes and then the law recognizes like, hey, society's changing. For example, same-sex marriage, for example, trans rights, like the law is sort of reactive to what's happening. And in this situation, maybe the reason it was probably so challenging is because society hadn't yet accepted that Black people were human. Deserve the same rights, right? So it's like you can implement the law, but society hasn't yet caught up. Things are still too fresh. And I think that's interesting. Yeah,
Definitely. And we'll talk more about that after the walk into a memory lane, because that's the ideas are strong. Yeah. So, okay, in 1960, February 1st, for African-American college students in Greensboro, North Carolina, refused to leave the rules were whites only. So to answer a little bit of your question, Stinnett, there were some places where it was whites only. So this kid, Ezell Blair Jr., David Bushman, Franklin McCain, and Joseph McNeil were inspired by Gandhi about nonviolent protest. So the Greensboro sit-in is how we call it right now. And it sparks something in other cities around. It was what is the reason? Yeah. And that's interesting, Joanne. And it just takes some individual. It's because yeah, there's Martin Luther King was like a pastor, but there's individuals. There's Rosa Parks, like everyday woman. There's students. There's people who just say like, you know what? That is enough. I will resist. So it just, and then when you resist, it sparks something else elsewhere. So it's interesting, especially because like the theme of this year, Black History Month, is resistance. So resistance. In 1960, November 14, 6-year-old Ruby Bridges, we remember this name, is escorted by 4 armed federal marshals as she becomes the first student to integrate William Frantz Elementary School in New Orleans. So her action inspired Norman Rockwell painting The Problem We All Live In. So yeah, a small kid. And I saw documentaries on her story, and she was somewhat aware of the importance. She was so young, and you can see there's videos of that moment, people screaming at her, like when you had to be escorted by 4 policemen and you were a kid. And she's just been to school. She was like, pretty intelligent kid, but like even in integrated, she was still a bit apart from the other. Not everybody was ready to for existence, let's say. Okay. So in 61, through 61, Black activists known as freedom riders took bus trip around America in the south of the United States and to protest in the segregated bus terminal where it was like for whites only, restroom, lunch counters. The freedom rides were marred by horrific violence from white protesters, and it really drew a lot of international attention to the cause.
So that was interesting because now there was like white activists against other whites.
Yeah.
Who were in favor of the segregation against.
Yeah, exactly. And like the non-violence was really difficult. Like they were training really to teach people how to remain non-violent, even if people because people will just spit on them, like
Yes.
and
they had like dogs too, like dogs.
Exactly, they're being like violently attacked, and what resonates here is like if they were reacting of that violence, then it was a good reason to be taken in prison. So didn't have like the right to defend themselves, to have their integrity respected. So June 63, the governor George C. Wallace stands in the doorway of the University of Alabama to block 2 Black students from registering. The stand-up continues until the president, John F. Kennedy, sends the National Guard to the campus. August 28, 63, approximately 250,000 people take part into the march on Washington. There was Martin Luther King there. He gives the speech that we know, I Have a Dream. And it's the closing address of comment dire, in front of the Lincoln Memorial Stadium. We're gonna listen to it a little bit and pretty soon. What is interesting here is because he really put the attention about the fact that, and I quote, "Behold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." So September 15, 1963, a bomb at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, kills 4 young girls and injures several other people prior to the Sunday services. The bombing fuels angry protest. July 2nd, 1964, the President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 into a law. It prevents employment discrimination due to race, color, sex, religion, or national origin. Title 7 of the Act established the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So it prevents discrimination. February 21st, 1965, Black religious leader Malcolm X is assassinated during a rally by a member of the Nation of Islam. Okay, then now it's like who? There's a lot of things happening, but like that's the last moment we're like, woo, things will emerge from this. So in March 7, 1965, we have like Bloody Sunday. So what we talk about Bloody Sunday, it referred to like there were protests and there were a lot of violence happened. And so there were a march from Selma to Montgomery. So around 600 civil rights marcher walks from between like these two cities and protest about the Black voter suppression. So local police block and brutally attack them. After successfully fighting in court for the right to march, Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders lead 2 more marches and finally reach Montgomery on March 25th. August 6, 1965, the President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act in 19. Voilà. And it prevents like the use of the literacy test as a voting requirement. So it also allows like federal examiner to review voter qualification and federal observer to measure polling places. What is, we're going to do something about the right to vote, something that happened in the United States prior to Joe Biden being there. There was a lot of things about voting.
The stolen election among the votes. I don't know.
But there are like, because like voting, if you can vote, you can have like your interest protected. And so the fact that under Trump,
Do you
what
mean
happened?
that felons couldn't vote? Like
No,
those-
not felons. No, just like but yeah, there
Like
was that.
after they get
Yeah.
out of prison.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a little bit, it's pretty much, pretty much the same. It's like, oh, you can't read and write, you can vote. Oh, you're out of prison, you can vote. What is interesting is there's a large majority of people were arrested and being imprisoned in the United States or African American. There's a large component. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily fit with the severity or the crime.
It's not like
It's not more,
proportional.
exactly. It's not that because there's more Black people or committing crime, there's just more Black people in jail.
Mhm.
Yes. So that's a way, like finding something, an element that will prevent a certain part of the population to vote and to exercise their rights.
We have 10 minutes left.
Oh yeah, already? Oh my God, it's been great, but okay, good. So just like to say that civil rights, okay, you know what? Let's go listen to something interesting. Yeah. And just after that was the March and I have a dream. Let's finish with Martin Luther King. Okay. Oh yeah. There's some confusion there, so.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Can we just confirm that everyone can hear? If someone wouldn't mind in our virtual setting, giving a thumbs up or something if they can hear. Or even popping it in the chat.
Maybe they're not because you paused
Oh,
it now. So
There we go. Okay, perfect. So that you were able to hear the video, so I will just restart it.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. have a dream that one day on the red throne, sons of former slaves and sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream. In Alabama, with its vicious racism, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream. That one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the be revealed and shall see it together. It is the faith that I go back to the south with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out the mountain of despair of stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free. Be able to sing with new meaning, my country tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the hiking Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Tennessee. Freedom ring from every hill and all hills of Mississippi. From every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day with all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty.
So resourceful. You know, and
It's sort of actually did like 50 years.
yeah, it's so exactly, it's so like reality. And exactly, and that's a beautiful thing. That's something, and it ends things on a positive note to have like that faith like when faith actions and getting together are, really powerful. Yeah. So it went really way faster than I thought. I think that you have invited me again so I can talk about a lot of other stuff that have more about systemic racism and etc. But at least we have a lot to be thinking about right now, and how it's like the beginning. In fact, I think about how as citizen and how as members of the law to, like, you can have an impact on the next step of our society. Because yeah, we need, because we were talking about that a little bit before, and I think that you raised that point. It's like education, talking about, having money and funding. Like one of the effect of discrimination and systemic racism, because it's systemic, everything about judicial system, education, health, mental and physical. There's banking and access to a home, to property. All of this are systemic ways that will prevent marginalized people to have that access and to be able to climb the ladders of the society. It's why in the United States, by example, in other places, they ask for reparation, because when you don't have that at start, you are late compared to everybody else who had the house way before, who've been able to send their kids to school and good universities, because property and patrimoine, heritage, yeah, it's building through years. And so that's what we can, and as lawyers too, is the law, so you're able to help out people have a better literacy regarding all this. So thank you. Nalini?
I'm just going to say some final remarks. I just really wanted to thank you, Murielle, for hosting this wonderful event to celebrate Black History Month. We're very lucky to actually have you in Iqaluit, and hopefully we'll be able to welcome you back for other SEAL events, and everyone joining us today. Encouraging everyone as well to have a look at Murielle's resources list, and we will follow up with additional events focusing on equity, diversity, and inclusion related to our cultural competency. We have a couple of events coming up in April, including with Murielle again as a panel discussion. Merci, bon après-midi, thanks everyone. Have a lovely weekend.